In my last tutorial, I showed you how to create the emote and toggle menu. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create the color menu, how to toggle a hue, and change the hue. To do that, let's hop over to Unity. In Unity, we're going to start off by creating a color folder. I'm going to call this color menu. In this folder, we're going to create a new VRChat submenu called color menu. We're going to add this color menu to our main menu here by adding a control, calling this color menu. Under type, we're going to select the submenu and drag the new color menu in. Next, we're going to set two parameters. One's going to be an integer, the second one's going to be a float. For integer, we're going to call it toggle hue, and for the float, we're going to call it Hue Shift. Now that we've done that, let's go to our facial expressions here, our animator, and if you don't have it open, it's in Window, Animation, Animator. In here, we're going to make sure the parameters are the same, so we're going to add an integer called toggle hue, and we're going to add a float called Hue Shift. Now that we're done with that, let's go to our materials for our avatar, and we're going to select the materials that we want to change the colors for. In this case, I want to change the colors for the eyes and the trim on the outfit. So what we're going to do is select the materials that we want here. So I have named them DF for default state. What we want to do is make a second material for the hue shift. So I'm going to select each material that I want to color change by holding Control and then Control D to duplicate them. I'm going to rename them to hue. So that one's for the outfit and this one's going to be for the eyes. Now what we want to do is add in our textures for these new materials. So let's go down to textures. I have provided a link down in the description for this rainbow gradient texture. This is what we're going to be needing today to make sure all the hue shifts work. So what we're going to do is open up the material here, and for this to work I've used Poiyomi Toon shader, and in his most recent 5.6 shader under the main tab there's details here, and in this detail texture what we want to do is drag the rainbow gradient in here, and I'm gonna add a mask to it. That way it only shows the eyes. Next we're gonna make sure our tilling is 0.01 here. It's gonna say 1 for you, but just make sure it's 0.01. Now let's do that for the body material. So textures, select our rainbow gradient and add our mask here. Make sure it's 0.01, good there. And we're ready to go. So what we want to do is create a duplicate of our avatar. So let's unhide and duplicate, rehide. And we're going to drag in our facial expressions animator to our controller here. Next we're going to go to our layers and we're going to create a new layer called Hue Shift. We're going to set this weight to 1. Now we're going to create our animations. Under color menu here, let's create a new animation and we're going to call it default state. Next we're going to create 2 more animations. This one's going to be hue off. We're going to duplicate that and rename this one to hue on. Next we're going to drag our default state animation into the animator here, and we're going to create a blend tree. Next we want to make a transition from our default state to our blend tree here, and in this transition we're going to add that integer condition toggle hue, and we're going to make sure the value equals 1. We want to go back to our default state, so let's create another transition back and set the condition toggle hue is not equal to 1. In this blend tree, we're going to double click our left mouse button to open it, and in these blend tree, we're going to set our parameter here and set it to the float Hue Shift. Under the motion tab, we're going to add 2 motion fields here, and we're going to drag in our hue off and our hue on animation. Once we're done with that, let's go back here by clicking the Hue Shift and click on our avatar here, go to animation, and let's select hue off. Now we're going to click the record button, go back to our project folder here, and go down our viewport here, and let's select the materials that we want to work with today. So we want to change the eyes and the clothing. So let's select the eyes material here. If it's not showing for you, it's under here, under materials, just open it up here, and we're going to drag in our hue material, and we're going to do the same thing for our costume, drag in that. Next, what we're going to do is under the shader here, we're going to select the detail texture and make sure this offset is 0, but we're going to need a red bar to indicate that it's recorded. So put any value and just set it back to normal. Next, we're going to do that for our eyes as well. So we're going to do any value, set it back to normal. In the animation tab, we're going to copy and paste the next keyframe. We're going to do that for hue on, but this time when we drag in the materials for the eyes and the costume here, we want to make sure that this offset is equal to 1 instead of 0. Let's do that for the eyes as well. Now that we're done that, we can copy and paste the keyframes and go to our default state animation. Click the record button, go to body, and what we're going to do is actually drag in our hue eyes here, but we're going to drag back in our default material so it replaces it and records it. This way, if we want to go back to our default state, it doesn't stick with the blend tree here with the hue material. So let's do that with the costume as well. It won't work if you drag in the same material, so you just have to drag in a different one and then drag in the default one. We're done with that. We have to copy and paste the keyframe here, and we're pretty much ready to test out this avatar. So let's click the little play button here. Now let's go to our parameters here. Let's go down to toggle hue and set that value to 1. As you can see, the transition was made to our blend tree. We can double click to open it up, and in here, this is our float value. We can move the slider, and it should change the color. Yep. So it's changing the color of it based on that offset from the gradient texture that we're using. So far, this is probably one of the easiest methods I've learned to just do the hue shift. But we're not done yet. What we have to do now is click out of play mode. Let's delete the duplicated avatar, re-enable our default, and in our color menu here, we're going to add 2 controls. One's going to be our toggle hue. I'm going to set that to a toggle. Our parameter is going to be toggle hue. For our next control, it's going to be called Hue Shift. For our type, instead of toggle, we're going to select radial puppet, and We don't put anything in here. Make sure this is set to none. For our parameter rotation, we're going to set this to our float. So it should say Hue Shift Float right down here. And if you want, I have also provided this in the link down in the description. I've provided this color wheel icon. You can add this to the texture here, or you can use anything you want. Now we can test out the avatar. So let's upload it. Let's build and test this avatar, shall we? Test avatar has been built. Let's go back into game. Select it in the other tab here. And let's test it out. With the new menu, it's going to be in expressions, and in my previous tutorials I showed you how to create the emote and toggle menu. You should check those out if you haven't already. Now we have a new menu called color menu. You can select that, and we can toggle our hue. Now we can change the color, and we can leave it wherever we want. We can close out the menu and the color stays the same. We can move it around as much as we want, and then we can toggle it. It goes back to our default materials. That's pretty much the end of this tutorial. You can do the same for dynamic bones, and I'm going to explain that in my next tutorial. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching.